Hi there and welcome to this edition of Talking Credit, a podcast by CoCredo. I'm Dan Hancox and I'm very lucky to be joined today by Nick King. For those that don't know Nick, would it be right in saying, Nick, that you are the International Credit Director for Agility?
Yeah, Director for Credit and Credit Management for Europe. For Agility Logistics.
Well, thank you very much for sparing the time in your hectic schedule. I know that you're very busy for not only coming on here, but also trying to share with us your years of experience and the current situation. I'm very grateful.
My pleasure.
So I think the right thing to do is probably with I can't believe that you've been in the industry for over 25 years, looking so good as you do. And I'm not just saying
10, that. That's another 10.
But you know, you've got over 25 years of experience in the industry, of being in the credit industry, and not only, you know, as I know you, not only from being a credit manager, but also from working in the credit insurance market. Could you just give us a very brief summary of your background, if you'd be so kind?
Yeah, so you're right, Dan. I've been in the industry for more than 30 years. Started off as a credit controller, working for a small company at the time called Sandal Perkins, and is now known as Travis Perkins.
Mm-hmm.
Started off my career there, worked my way up, became a credit manager. And fate should have it, I ended up back at Travis Perkins as a credit director.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Oh, did you not know that? Yeah. So I ended up back at Travis Perkins. When I left Travis Perkins, there was 4 of us. Sandal Perkins, there was 4 of us. Then they merged with Travis Arnold and became Travis Perkins. And then when I went back, there was 230 people in Travis Perkins. So wow. Yeah, went full circle. And then I decided to take a little bit of time out and went and go and work on the other side of the fence and worked in the insurance industry, credit insurance industry. But quickly came to realise that at the end of the day, I'm a credit manager. But it was a great insight. I was able to see what went on in the insurance industry. Yeah. So I've now become a underwriter's and a broker's worst nightmare, because I know exactly what.
You know the tricks, yeah.
Yeah. Worked for a bit in Barcelona, setting up a shared service centre in Barcelona. And now I'm working for a logistics company called Agility Logistics, and they are a part of the logistics group, who are into all kinds of areas. But the division I work for is Global Integrated Logistics, and we don't just move stuff from A to B. We're a solution provider for logistics. So we provide warehousing, we do fairs and events, and we specialise in moving chemicals. So yeah, we do move stuff from A to B, but we are, we'll have Ministry of Defence and saying we've got this problem here, we need to do this, and we will come up with a solution for them. So we're more than a logistics company. We call ourselves a logistics solution provider.
So Nick, does that just cover Europe in terms of your role, or?
Yeah, so I'm credit manager for credit and collections, or credit management, for the whole of the European region.
Okay.
I'm responsible not only for the day-to-day, making sure people collecting cash and what have you, but I'm also for the order to cash transformation project, which was getting all of the European entities on one single ERP system. Making sure we've got the same process, procedures, and that we know I'm mentoring the staff, if you like, and making sure they're doing. We're all pushing in the same direction, which we'll come on to later. It's actually paid benefits during COVID-19, actually, for us as a credit department. So.
Okay. And then am I right in thinking so as well, because not only do you wear your day-to-day role, obviously, for Agility, but you're also very active within the ICTF, if I've said that right? It was
Yeah, I'm a great believer in, people who know me will know I live and breathe credit. I think, you get into credit, you either love it or you hate it. And if you hate it, you get out. But I absolutely love it. I live and breathe it. I have done ever since I kind of really started in it. And I was a former board member and helped put ICTF together, which is International Credit and Trade Finance. But that's about kind of networking and learning. As long as I've been in the industry, I learned something every month from colleagues around the world. So you never know everything. There's always a solution you're trying to find. And ICTF is about a network. There's education as well on there. So I've been part of a mentoring scheme with ICTF, but I actually sit on the board and on the executive board, and attend all their conferences. So yeah, so heavily involved in that, and love it.
Then you actually have a personal life. Surprise, surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Go
Yeah.
into that, though. So,
No, it's cool anyway.
no, exactly. So, in terms of agility and working within the logistics solutions market, the obvious question, I don't want to, spend all of our time talking about particularly COVID because of the fact that, I feel we are consumed by that, rightly so in some respects. But how have you, if you don't mind me asking the question, how has the business dealt with the interruption or the distraction? Or is it maybe not?
Yeah, as you can imagine, as a business, being in the logistics sector with all the borders closing and no movement, been very, very tough. I mean, margins are very, very thin in the logistics sector anyway.
Yeah, I bet.
We probably have lost 40 to 50% of our business, if not more, during the COVID, just because we couldn't move stuff. Now there's been stuff that we have been able to move that have been deemed important, such as PPE. We've been moving that around, but obviously you need to get special licenses and what have you. So as a logistics business, and we've done what every other sensible organisation's done, we've made certain cuts and cut our cloth really to fit our business. It hasn't been disastrous all over our lines because we have shipped all kinds of different lines like ocean and road and rail, and certain areas of the business have kept up and others have kept down. So hopefully we're starting to see a recovery as the borders open. Certainly in country is much more, we're seeing some pickup in there, but as we go forward and borders come down and we're able to get across, I think that we'll see the business pick up. But obviously it's been tough for us as a business. As a credit department, not so much so, not in Europe anyway.
So how is your credit department made up?
So the credit department is made up of credit controllers all around Europe. So we have credit controllers based in each of the countries that we deal with in Europe. Part of the program that we're doing is we're centralising some of the back office stuff, like credit risk, for example, is being centralised. But all the rest is in country. All the collectors are in country, and I manage from a European view. I will set the European target and the country targets, and which will drive down into collector targets, and we manage it through that way. But otherwise, they're individual. So credit controllers in France and Germany and Netherlands and the North.
And they are based within country. It's not a shared service centre like it was in your previous role, whereby they've got.
No, they're all in country. They're all in country. We're just in the process of doing some back office centralisation, like credit risk, but all the collectors and that are based in their country. Yeah. So, the benefit of us going through not the centralisation, but the putting in the new ERP system and looking at the process and procedures has actually paid us dividends in Europe as we went into COVID, because everybody was operating the same. Everybody, and we had one system. I was able to look to see what people were doing, what the issues were in one system, whereas before that I wouldn't have been able to because everybody was
log into really different. Yeah.
We set targets. So in March, just before we went into lockdown, all countries started going into lockdown, we set our cash collection targets as we would normally do and had been doing for the last 6 to 8 months. And we said, well, we're not going to alter them in April either. We'll just leave it to see where we are.
Yeah.
And what we found is the guys were actually hitting their targets in March and in April and in May. Slippage was in the south, what we call the southern area, which you'd expect, which is Portugal, Spain and Italy. And they started to see slippages with companies that were closing and what have you. But generally across Europe, we seem to have held up our own and been able to, get the cash in that we were predicting in our cash collection targets. We made some small adjustments. We were probably overall from the beginning of the year, we were probably about 5 million down against our normal targets. But there again, our billings were down as well, because obviously we're not doing the business. So, But the targets that we were setting based on all the billings that we were having, we were reaching. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of months, especially with with the south. As they're coming back, hopefully we'll start picking up on there.
So, I mean,
Uh,
would you? I suppose two parts to this question. What is that? What you expected?
no.
No, and I think that's important. The reason I answered that was sort of guided because as a business owner myself with CoCredo, we've been really pleasantly impressed with how people have tried to pay.
Yeah. No is the honest answer. We made a call out in March that we wouldn't alter the target when everybody went into
Yeah,
lockdown. We then made a call out in April that we wouldn't do like reduce the targets because we wanted to say, well, if we were in a normal scenario, how much is COVID gonna affect us? Because
yeah.
we track the targets on a weekly basis, so it gave us an idea. So it was a surprise when we went into May that we'd realised in April we'd hit our target. So again, we didn't make the adjustments in May. Really, it was all based on the billings that we were doing. So yeah, it was a surprise, if I'm honest with you.
And what do you? We've none of us got a crystal ball, but based upon your experience and in credit management, which arguably, we've not experienced a pandemic before, but sat here in July, do you have any estimations, any forecasts about what you think will happen? Maybe, like you say, broken down by southern and other regions.
Yeah, I think we're going to go into a recession.
Globally or
yeah, I think so. Globally,
okay.
certainly globally. I just think, as we come out, as companies come back, people are not going to be so patient. There's certain things in place to protect companies about paying and giving them, time to pay and what have you. But that's going to wear thin because at the end of the day, everybody's chasing cash and there's only so much cash in it.
So you think people's patience with that is going to start, or companies' patience is going to start to reduce?
Yeah,
I've heard it actually.
Unfortunately, I think we have very short memories.
Yeah.
Right? I think come January next year, when we all hope there's a vaccine in place and social distancing is starting to wane away, people forget that we had a pandemic, in March of the previous year, and consequently, I think people won't be so patient on, and I think we'll start seeing a lot of companies going under and going bust. So that's something I'm got on my on my plans, and what am I going to do, and how am I going to make sure that my guys sitting in Europe are trying to watch that and keep an eye on it and start seeing the signs, and how are we going to manage that? I think my belief now, I mean, it's a horrible thing to say, but I believe now that this is the next 2 years is where credit managers will come into their own. When we're in good times, people forget about us and we're a backseat and we're maybe a minor tool to do business with, but we're not important to the business. What I found with this whole pandemic is actually we have become in our own, and I'm not just talking within agility, colleagues I've talked to in the marketplace. Yeah. For the first time ever, the CEO and the CFO have been able to find the credit manager's telephone number and give them a call.
Funny that.
So I think we've come into our own. It's about a matter of holding our own. And I think this is where the good, true professional credit manager will come into their fore in the next 2 years as they, as the world goes into recession. Those that are being on top of their game. Yes, I'm not saying that people won't get bad debts, but it's how you can limit that impact, or how you're advising the business, about what business you're taking and what collections you're doing, and working with customers. And I believe those companies that work with customers during the pandemic, hopefully those customers will stay loyal, but there will be others that go under. So yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for the credit forum as a whole to come into their own in the next 2 years, in my belief.
So I know that you're very passionate about mentoring, not only from your team's basis, but also outwardly as well, Nick. So I don't want to throw you under the bus. I've not spoke to you about this before, but what makes a good credit manager? You're talking about the good tools that they would use. I would hope that credit reports, as being a provider, is one of the strings to those bows, but I'm not looking at it as a sales pitch. What else is there?
I think
be doing
a good credit manager is by experience. I think you've been at the coalface, you've done the job, you've been a collector, but you've also been through most of us have got scars through something or other.
Yeah.
Knowledge, networking, I think, is very important. We don't all know the answers.
Why? Because you share those best practices, you can share experiences with other people.
ICTF is great if you end up with a problem in collecting in Burkina Faso, for example. There's somebody out there that's experienced it. If I think about the Middle East, I know people who will be able to help me collect in the Middle East. And that can't, so I think a good credit manager has a good network. Not just in collections, but with lawyers and collection agencies and insurance, and understanding their whole pitch. And I think a good credit manager is only as good as the team that he got working for them. So I think you have to have a good team. You have to, as you know, I'm into mentoring. I love mentoring. You got good collectors in, then you're a good credit manager, and you have to need to provide the tool. You have to have the right tools as well. And you have to have the support from your organisation who understand credit. I don't think there's any one or two things that says you're a good credit manager. I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And I think, some people are sitting out there screaming and saying, "Oh, Nick, what about this? What about that?" Yeah, there's 101 things. I think if we sat in a room for a day with 3 or 4 credit managers, we'd come up with 1,000 different things that we would all think makes a good credit manager. But I would say networking for sure, and understanding your own business, understanding the process from end to end, from your billing through to your collection.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of your team, what has been the impact? You said that the cash collection has been above your expectations. I think that's across the board. I've heard that numerous times, and also I've experienced it myself. How has your credit team been affected? Because I appreciate the fact that there'll be some people that maybe are watching or listening to this that feel maybe, are they the only ones to experience it? So they may experience the same things that you're doing, or they may not be doing the things that you're doing. And therefore, actually, to hear your experience from a mentoring aspect, they actually go, that's really useful. Actually, I'm going to start to do that. What can we do to
So in the early days, when all the countries went into lockdown, I think it was, and people were never used to working from home. Most of the credit controllers and even credit managers to some extent were used to working in an office. And now all of a sudden, for those who haven't worked from home, it's a skill really that you have to, if you're not careful, you either become, oh, well, I'm not going to start till 10, or I start at 8 and I don't finish till 10. So it's about managing the time. Yeah. So in the early days, I made sure I was connecting with the credit managers, making sure that everybody had what they needed as far as computers and connectivity were. And then what I asked all of my credit managers to do was to hold a virtual coffee morning every day. So it's a 15-minute, how you doing? What's the got any problems? With everybody in the team. I offered myself up to each of the credit managers if they wanted me to attend to support. None of them took me up on it, which I'm hoping is a good sign, not a bad sign that they didn't want me there, but a good sign that, obviously I have a review with the credit managers on a monthly basis anyway. So I always ask how their teams are doing and what have you. And I think it was very interesting how quickly people picked up and got used to working from home. And the fact that we had a system that people, that the credit manager could look at when they're talking to their credit controller also helped, really. Some people, I think, cope better than others. Agility as a whole had a number of mental well-being programs and videos that they offered out both to managers and, not just to managers, but across the group, that you could dial into, that it was all done on Zoom, that tried to how do I cope working from home? I'm used to talking to somebody, especially if you're somebody who lives on your own and now you're working from home and you don't have that interaction with people in the office. So Agility has been really, really good in providing the tools to cope with people's well-being. Just keeping close to our team, really. Again, I don't think there's a silver bullet. I think we all found our own way, really.
I think it's sometimes so difficult, isn't it, working from home, that you don't have that sharing of experience to a certain extent. You have to make a phone call. It doesn't happen by not fluke is maybe not the right word, but you know, where you'd have a conversation with someone because you sat next to them and you say, you know, okay, we just had this happened, and oh well, actually this actually, you know, have you tried this or
You
whatever it
have to
may
make
be.
more of an effort. Yeah, on the
You
coffee
actually,
breaks,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
So,
exactly,
and you know, if you're talking to your partner or whatever in the room and saying, "Oh, this happened," and they don't work in the credit industry, they have no idea what you're talking
yeah. Yeah, but
about.
I've not heard anybody mention that. So that's another good point, Nick, in the fact that
So
you know,
normally, you know, something will happen, and you'll talk to your colleague next year, and you know, situation happened on a phone call. You try and do that to a partner who doesn't work in the credit industry or worked in collections. They have no idea, and they can't support you or comment or
yeah,
anything like that.
didn't
So
think of it.
you know, so those were type of things we try to encourage people to talk about on the virtual coffees. You know, in Travis Perkins we called it the morning board, but we'd implemented that, you know, as part of the CICMQ program. But you know, Zoom, I think, you know, definitely ways of working will change as we go forward. What that's going to look like, I don't know. I think there will be more opportunities for people to work from home.
Yeah,
You know, people are not going to get upset now if they say, well, you know, something's going on at home, I don't really want to take a day's holiday now. They can actually say, well, I can work from home today.
yeah.
Um, yeah, as you said, you've got the decorators here, paint and decorators
People
in.
in a
So
minute, yeah,
yeah, so you know, you may want to be able to do that. I think, you know, I think the whole world, you know, not just credit, I think the whole world is going to change. It's just, what does that look like when we're out of it? Like,
yeah. I think, you know, this from you know, from my business point of view, I think, you know, all of us were maybe thrown in, and I'm talking, you know, probably a lot of other people. We were thrown into this quite quickly, weren't we? And we were thrown into it on a what we hoped would be a temporary basis. And a lot of people have set up on a temporary basis. You know, the reason why I've got the builders in at the minute is that they're making some changes to the garage so that you know, I can work much more on a permanent basis in that basis. So I think that, you know,
you
there's
know, I mean, I look at my own job. If you know, Dan, I travelled a lot before the
yes,
COVID. I was always on the
yeah,
road, and what this has proved to me is that not everything I didn't need to be face to face in a building all the time, going from country to
yeah,
country. I can do majority over Zoom. So I think, you know, don't get me wrong, I love my travel, so I'll be disappointed. But from a company perspective, I don't need to travel all the time. Yes, there is certain things, and you know, getting to this point now, there is certain tasks that I'm trying to do that you just can't do on Zoom. You have to be present. You have to be there. But I think, and as we go into next year, I reckon my travel budget will be cut by 50%.
What,
Personally,
what, what about on a collections basis? I've not heard any from anything I've seen. I've not heard this question answered. What I mean, from a collections basis, is Zoom being used? Is video? You know, I've heard from a sales point of view. I don't need to go and see that customer 5 times a year, 4 times a year. I'll go and see them once because it's the, you know, the human touch, seeing someone in the whites of their eyes, having that connection, even if it's social distance, is important. But we can regulate that by saying, well, 3 out of 4 times I'm going to do a Zoom call. I've not heard it from the other side of it. What about
yeah,
collect?
I think it's brought on its own. Whereas before, maybe as a credit manager or as a credit, you know, senior credit person or credit risk, you may only go and see those key accounts or the ones with
Yeah,
high credit limits or the ones who are in real trouble.
yes, yeah,
You know, because there's only, you know, so much traveling you can do and
yeah,
what have you.
I know.
Now you've got the opportunity of connecting with people in businesses who maybe you didn't with before,
Yeah,
and because they weren't that, you know, not saying they weren't that important, but they weren't high enough up of importance to be
only have
able
time.
to go and jump in a car and travel for 3 hours.
Yeah,
Now there's no excuse. You know, and people are used to Zoom. So whereas maybe before in a company you were used to doing video conferencing, but you know, your small one-man band wasn't used to that. Now they would be, because they've probably done family Zoom calls during the COVID, you know, so they won't be disrupted or upset if you say, do you know what, I'd really like to connect with you, but instead of me coming and wasting 2 hours of your time and you having to take me out to lunch or whatever, then I'll do it by Zoom call,
just
and
a quick
so
ten
you can
minutes.
invite other people in to that. And then next time, you know, we'll come and I'll take you out to lunch. But I think there's more an opportunity now to connect with more of your customers on a collections and credit basis than there ever was before.
And do you think, if someone was to, if one of my suppliers was to call me and say, and I'm thinking as I'm saying this, because I haven't had any of one of my suppliers ask me for, have I? No, I don't think I have. Not one supplier has contacted me to have a Zoom call. I don't owe I don't, I don't owe money. But if it becomes an awkward situation whereby I'm not paying you, Nick, should we expect to have a Zoom call with them?
I think you have to by what relationships you have with those customers.
Yeah,
You know, whether you think a Zoom call is going to be accepted and whether they would, you know, get uptight about it, and whether you would achieve what you want to achieve. You know, you have to look at it from both sides. You have to look at it
yeah,
from your own side, and you have to look at it from the customer side. I think every situation is different. I think there'll be some calls where you can ring up and say, look, I see you haven't paid us, you know, or they've rang you and said, I've got cash flow difficulty. Rather than going out and seeing it, you can, you know, don't forget you can share screens. So, you know,
mm,
going and saying, I want to look at your accounts, you don't need to go there and look at their
yeah,
accounts. You can ask them to share them on screen with you.
yeah.
And so you can do all the things you
Point.
would do that you would go there. But again, you know, you probably wouldn't do it for a multi-million pound company that you're dealing with. You may be doing it on the smaller end. So I
Or if
think
it's a sticky conversation, if it's can't pay, won't pay.
and maybe it's the first conversation is via Zoom, right? And if, you know, as a good credit person, I think maybe this is a new opportunity
Yeah,
and something ICTF and CICM and all the others should think about is how do you conduct a collections call via Zoom, right? And when do you know it's time to actually, do you know what, this is not appropriate anymore to carry this conversation on through
yeah.
Zoom. I need to be able to get in my car and go down and see that customer.
Or
And I
you have
think,
a voice call or something that's not so maybe.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think there's a place, and I think certainly, you know, the first call, depending on how that call goes, it's like, you know what, it's not appropriate to have a Zoom call anymore. I need to get off and go down and see the customer.
Is it harder to say no to someone face to face than it is over the phone? I would
Yeah.
say yes. So
And that's why, you know, I always used to encourage all of my credit team and credit staff, and, you know, my belief of good credit managers, going back to what is a good credit manager, a good credit manager is somebody who is not just sitting behind their desk and going yes, no, and where's your money. There's
yeah,
somebody who gets off their bum and goes and sees their customers.
yeah,
So yeah, I think, you know, that face to face, it's you know, what I say to the guys is, if you're picking up that phone and chasing for money, if they've met you, they will put your face in their mind's eye, right, as if you're sitting in front of them. And it's a lot harder for them to say no in the future if they've met you than it is if they've never met you, because they just put their own picture in there. You know, you're not
you
personal to
have a
them.
relation.
It's just
Yeah,
another
you have a
supplier.
relationship.
You know, so I encourage credit controllers and credit managers to go out and see your customers, and you may only have to do it once, and it's, you know, you're not necessarily seeing the owner of the business or you're seeing the person who authorizes or who makes sure that your payment is going to be paid. You know, go meet them, buy them a coffee, understand them, you know, when their birthday is and all the rest of it. Become a personal, no, not too close, but become personal with them, so
Mm.
it becomes harder for them to say no, or they become honest with you.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then you understand the situation. Yeah,
I can't pay you because we've got a cash flow problem.
yeah.
Right.
Well, then
And they're more likely to pay you or be honest with you over somebody they've never met.
so when people now feel anxious about going out to people's, or it's not allowed to go out to people's, to companies because of the guidelines, and that may well get worse as we
Yeah.
we go into the latter part of the year. Would it be fair to say that, that you would encourage the fact that they, on a first call basis, at least try and see your customers and have that relationship by at least having some sort of virtual call?
Yep. And, you know, why don't you put it on, you know, put it on your documentation or your letters or your email, you know, here's my Zoom details, or if you wish to talk to me, I will be available by Zoom or
Yeah.
Microsoft Meetings or whatever it is your company use. Why don't you put that on the bottom of the documentation so the customer knows that, actually, do you know what, that's not a bad idea. I'll rather than ringing Nick on phone, I'll ask him if I can have a quick meeting with him or a face-to-face on Zoom or
Yeah, and share screens and
their
show the
screen.
backup, and yeah,
It becomes more personable, I think.
yeah,
Collections become more, I think, you know, the habit of collections will change in the future going forward. And who knows, in collection software, you might even see the link to Zoom with somebody from their account.
Yeah. Well, I think, with technology, things seem to be moving forward at a hugely faster pace than ever before because of necessity. And I think things that have, from an IT point of view, that have maybe sometimes been diarised to be introduced over the next 2 years, all of a sudden, from a necessity basis, have been done in 2 months. So it's shown that there's the speed there to do it based upon priority, and the
Because,
priorities have changed. So maybe we will see things like that fairly quickly.
yeah, and of course, I was talking from a business to business point of view. I wasn't talking from a business to consumer. I think,
Yeah.
I've never worked in that field, or I've touched on it, and I think that's a different conversation, and you'd
Yeah.
have to talk to somebody who works in the consumer field, whether zooming is appropriate. Probably not, and it may be under data protection is not allowed. But I'm talking business,
Yeah.
business to business. So.
Way of doing things. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So over this whole time, you with the wealth of experience that you have, is there anything that, not that you've done wrong, but is there any lessons that you've learned, particularly over the last 3, 4 months? I think we're 110 days into it where we stand today. Is there any lessons that you would say, or you would be happy to share with the viewers and listeners, that you go, I've learned to do that a bit differently? Obviously, Zoom calls.
Yep, Zoom calls. I thought I was a good communicator with my team,
Right.
but I realized that maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So I improved my communication frequency.
Okay.
So whereas I might have only done once a month because it was a review and I just kept it to a review and I didn't do anything else, what I realized was that hour's call that I had down for my ledger review was only ever enough to do the ledger review. It
Yeah.
wasn't ever enough to ask how people were doing or what were they doing differently. And so I increased my frequency. I didn't just keep it to a month, like, every 2 weeks, and again, adapted to, people don't want you on their back all the time, especially on Zoom calls and what have you. They don't want you to keep ringing. I don't want to ring you every day. So you need to adapt, and I needed to work out that they needed more support than
Okay.
those did. So it was learning about who needed to be communicated with more regularly, who was happy to stay the same,
Yeah.
and who didn't want it at all, really.
I suppose
But
because
also,
whilst they're at work, Nick, not to interrupt, whilst they're at work, they've got that go to, but you don't know what their personal situations are. They might not have a garden that they can go and,
yeah.
they might have someone in the family that is unwell, and these are different conditions now at home that wouldn't have maybe normally affected it in the office. Is that?
And the fact that what we were saying earlier, you don't have that colleague next to you to talk to and
Yeah.
just to bounce things off. So, and also communication upwards. Again, I always thought I was pretty good at communicating to my bosses and tell them what was going on, but they were nervous about what was going on around cash collections and bad debts and COVID-19, and I found they were pinging me stuff every day, and that became a distraction. So what I agreed is I would update them at the end of every week, and we would agree on certain headings that we would do, and then anything else that was above and beyond that. So I do that,
Okay.
and managing my time better. I think that was a big learning for me, really.
In what way? So how have you adapted? Because I mean, I appreciate the fact that if you don't mind me saying, I'm exactly the same. Now the school run's involved where it wasn't before, and stuff like that. How have you had to be flexible? How have you improved?
So appreciating that, you have to take a lunch break, right? And you have to have the fact that you work from your home. The danger is it will slip into your home life, your work life.
Mm.
So you have to say at 5 o'clock or whatever you've decided, depending on your circumstances, your conference calls, you have to have a point in the ground where you say 7 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock at night, I'm done with work. I'm switching off.
No matter what.
And I'm going to go and do my home, because all you're doing is moving maybe from this chair into the
Yeah.
sofa, right? You're not going down the road. You're not moving. in the old days, I would leave the office and I'd go home and I'd still keep an eye on emails on my phone and what have you. And now you're not careful is, oh, well, actually, I don't need to keep an eye on the phone. I do them on my laptop. And what you find is you end up answering everything and
Yeah,
doing everything, and you're working till
very
midnight.
true.
So that's what I mean about managing time. Um, and managing emails, not trying to respond to everything all the time.
So have you given the other side of that? And so have you given your team more trust, more flexibility to rather than working 9 to 5, or are they expected to work 9 to 5? I mean, how? I'm just interested to see what any.
Well, my direct team are pretty good anyway, so I kind of given them they can work what they like.
Okay, as long as they get the job done, as long as they
And
do.
that's where I come from. Here's the job. You know what your goals are. You know what the activities. You know your timelines.
Yeah.
If that means you work till midnight to achieve it, then that's down to you. But at the same time, if you need to take a day off, or you need to start later, as long as you achieve the goals. For the teams further down, the credit managers and the collectors, they don't directly report into me because they report into their local finance director. So again, if they're not collecting the cash, then I'll be questioning them on their monthly calls, but also I'll be questioning their bosses. So I guess I've left it down to them to manage their own team.
Makes sense. You don't get, I think that's really nice to hear as well, because like you said, you're not micromanaging, you're allowing them to manage their team in the way that they see fit, knowing their team, rather than saying, right, this is across the board, this is what we're going to do. Yeah, but Bob in this country, he's struggling a little bit more. Well, that's not what we've agreed. You're allowing that flexibility.
But also I got the systems as well, so I can see where the people's calls are being. So the system where if you don't do something, it calls timeout. So on the screen it'll say timeout, which means the system has timed it out because you haven't done something within the strategy that we've set.
Right.
So
Okay.
you can then address that rather than ring the individual up. I'd ring the credit manager up and say, look, I noticed that Bobby, for example, is all our calls seem to be timing out. So is she not making phone calls, or what's the situation? Yeah. And then it's up to them to manage that situation, especially if they weren't reaching target.
I like the way you did that, though. You probably didn't even realise you did it that way, but you're calling to find out what the situation is rather than making an assumption. I think that's kind of a good manager. You ring up and say.
I think that maybe that's also a learning. Really, is you've learned not to make assumptions, right? Your first call is to find out what's going on, rather than just assuming someone's not doing their job.
Yeah, exactly. Which is I was on a GDPR call presentation, and I found it really interesting because it took on some new perspectives that I'd not thought about, and you have got to look at it from all different angles and understand what the right way is to deal with it going forward, because it might be a technology issue.
Yeah, but what it has done for me, I think, is it's highlighted. I'm just trying to think of the word, trying to be diplomatic, but maybe I can't. It's highlighted those who are really good at their job and those who are lazy, right? And is it because they're lazy, or is it because they're lacking the training? But
they've got distractions going on at home or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of made me think about what training I need to give, but also highlighted the people who I thought were good that have proved that they're not. Is when we come out of this and we move forward, is to keep an eye on those. And any of my team watching this will, oh God, Nick's going to keep an eye on us. No, that's not what I'll be doing.
No, in a good way.
Yeah, I want to be able to provide the training that they need, and then from there, if they don't then buck their ideas up, then we have a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I always say to my team, I can't do anything unless I know about it. So, if you don't talk to me, if you don't tell me what's going on, then I can't help. But then once you passed it on to me, it's my responsibility then, because if I choose not to do anything with it, that's my fault, not yours. But if you don't tell me what's going on, I can't do anything about it. That's your fault.
Yeah, correct. I think one of the biggest kind of things I've missed during this is the conferences, because we haven't been able to do conferences. No. I know people have done Zoom virtual conferences. It's not quite the same. It goes back to the networking thing again. Yeah. ICTF have ended up casting their conferences both here in Europe and in Americas, and that's tough because there's people you see on a yearly you don't see from one year to the next, And the educate, but they've tried to plug the gap with different things, as has the CICM, but
Yeah,
nothing warrants of being in the same room as your colleagues, right, and touching flesh, as they say.
absolutely. Yeah, but I worry, Nick. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this as well. We do quite a lot with the AICDP as well. Another good one, and I worry a little bit that it's been really open and transparent. I worry that higher up the chain, budgets are going to be looked at, and there's a leaning of businesses, and I worry that the importance isn't going to be given to those networking in reality, not virtually, as it maybe has in the past. So actually, the strength of getting on a plane and going to, I don't know, Hamburg, then someone says, well, why can't you do that on a virtual call? Why can't you? So I think, I worry about it because I know the power of it.
Yeah, I think you could write it off this year. If you were to go, even if we come out of COVID and all the borders come down in October,
Yeah,
and you went in and say, "Hey, boss, I want to go to this conference in Florida, or I want to go to this conference in Prague, and it's
yeah,
all the one I've always gone to," and they're going to go, "Well, we lost 50% of our business. It's not just a conference; it's the hotel and da 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 da."
yeah, yeah,
So I think this year you can forget about that. I
yeah,
think. And then it goes back to the point, I think, about credit managers being in their own and understanding the importance of networking and conferencing. Conferences, there's all, you have to look at the content of the conference, right? And also the people that go to them. But it's about a good credit manager selling. You want me to do a good job, but I can't do this on my own. I need to connect with my peers,
yeah,
and I need to find out. And I would argue the fact that it's even more important next year to learn what people and how people have suffered and how people have overcome the issues during this pandemic and possibly the recession that's about to hit us.
yeah.
And you do that. It's amazing what comes out of a coffee break at a conference that doesn't come out in the room at the conference, right?
Yeah.
So I would say it's more important next year to be attending such networking events to make sure that you're ahead of a good credit manager is ahead of the game.
There you go. There's a good bit of advice. Okay, so the mini budget, as it is being called, what are your thoughts on that? Firstly, does it have any impact upon you and your business? I expect not, but I might be wrong. And what is your general thoughts on it? Just because it's quite topical.
I can't speak whether it have an impact on the business. I guess some things will, some things won't. Not close enough to the further up the chain about what
Yeah.
people are doing, bearing in mind each country manages their own issues. We have a small operation in the UK, but bearing in mind, we're a European, so each country is different. So it depends what their budgets are doing.
I like to be positive. I know you do as well. You're an incredibly positive mentor. Let's leave this on a positive basis. Is there positive signs that or estimations that you can foresee going forward for the new normal? The Zoom calls and that sort of thing, the fact we'll be able to do that. You've mentioned that earlier.
I think technology are coming to its fore. I think
yes.
more people are looking at technology on the basis that they know people can work from home, but you need to give them the tools to do that. So I think technology will come into its fore. Maybe improve collection systems, integrating credit reports into ERP systems. I think that will come into, so as you said, Zoom calls. I think technology is the big one I see going forward.
I know you said before, not to answer the question for you, but I know you said before the fact that the credit managers will come into their own. They'll be given more importance within the business. Is that?
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think no, I hope so. I think they will. I've seen it before in when we were in the financial crisis. The struggle is then keeping that momentum, right, and keeping that.
Okay.
Once we come through it again, as I said, people have short memories, and
Yeah, and then they drive sales and
once they're through it, then the credit take a back seat again.
yeah.
So yeah, technology, and I think flexibility. It's not about people having to work from the office and be there 9 to 5. I think people can start, looking at their mixture of people they have in working for them. So whereas before it was always about a full-time FTE. Well, maybe you don't need that anymore. Maybe you can get away with, twice as many part-timers who can work from home, or people who can. I think that people will be looking, and I'll be surprised if they're not, of the structures and how people work. Right? Now
That,
there'll
that's,
be some,
that's really positive. I think there's sometimes where people can't get jobs because they can't do the hours. I've certainly, as an employer myself of a number of part-time people, I would say, and it's not to put anybody down on a full-time position, but I would say that someone that comes in and does 3 or 4 hours and then leaves is focused. It's like, variety being the spice of life. They come in, they do it, they leave. Whereas someone who, and I would do the same, is in a full-time position and is working all day, you need to have those breaks. So
but also I think whereas somebody who says, oh yeah, I can only work part-time because I've got childcare or I need to pick up my. Now what happens is you can say, well, on those days, actually you can work at home, and what you'll find is rather than saying I only want to work 3 hours or 4 hours, I can actually work 5 hours, because it means I can leave my desk from home, go around the corner. I don't have to go half an hour and catch the traffic from work and what have you, and therefore my hour. So I think those part-timers' hours can be stretched because people can work from home.
Yeah. And also, when I was on a call with a recruitment aspect to it early this week, and not once did I hear, and it's not to be disrespectful to anybody on the call, but not once did I hear anybody say, actually, as an employer, it means that we can employ that person from Manchester, even though we're in London, because they're not having to travel.
Yep.
There's a lot more 100% home roles coming that opens up the avenues to them, doesn't it? And the fact that actually I can go for that job that I never could do because of the fact that I'd have to relocate to.
Yeah, I definitely think, as people rethink, I think we will see completely different ways of working and different opportunities. I think, as much as it's been as a catastrophe, this COVID, I think there's going to be some positives that come out of it. That people would never have dreamt or even brought up in conversations or at boardrooms before, and now people are going to go, what about this? Have we thought about this? There's obviously at the end of the day there's savings, but it's all about productivity as well.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Nick, thank you very much. I've learned a lot. I'm not just saying that. I think that to look from a credit management point of view, not necessarily at the experience of a business, but actually to delve down a little bit into detail about how your teams work and the wealth of your experience has been really eye-opening, and I hope that people listening get something out of it. So thank you very much for giving your time.
It's been a pleasure, and I hope people find it interesting.
All right. Well, for those listening and those that are maybe watching via YouTube, I hope you stay safe. We'll no doubt have a few more of these Talking Credit podcasts going forward. So please subscribe so that you get notifications, and we'll look forward to bringing you more great content in the future. Take care, Nick.
Cheers. Thanks, Dan. Bye.